You just got home from work, finally ready to dive into Middle-earth. The last thing you want is to waste time digging through menus. So I did it for you. These are the smartest settings to save you hours of frustration in combat, inventory, and UI management. And even a super popular setting I don't always recommend turning on, plus one that's criminally off by default. Let's make your life easier in the next 9 minutes. Now, your UI is where you're going to spend thousands of hours, so it needs to work for you. But before you start dragging things around, let's make some more space for you by unlocking 2 more shortcut bars. You see, most players can run out of action bar room fast, like myself, but we can easily fix this by going inside the options menu, clicking on quick slots, then scrolling near the bottom and clicking enable always show bar 4 and bar 5. I like to move these off to the side and use them for passive stuff like map skills, mounts, food, stuff like that. It keeps my main bars in the center focused and clean for combat. Now that you've got some extra bars, let's think about actually laying out your skills. This is something a lot of players, myself included, don't plan ahead when they're working on a new MMO. Most will stick with the 1 through equal sign like the top row of their keyboard, which is fine. But if you've got an MMO mouse like I do, maybe consider batching your skills into 3 columns and 4 rows using modifiers like Shift or Alt to differentiate between the groups. That lets you group abilities by types and keeps it visually simple to identify based on your muscle memory. I personally save my bottom row for universal keybinds that I use across every MMO, like H for healing potions, Shift and C for cleansing, or G for interrupts. But whatever layout you use, don't forget to head to keybinds and bind a key to lock your bars once you're done. You'll thank yourself when you don't accidentally drag a skill off mid-fight that would save your life. I use Control Q as it's easy to remember as Control quick slots. Now that your keybinds are in place, it's time to finish your full UI layout because what's on screen really affects how smoothly you play. There is no right layout, but there is a wrong one, and that is anything that slows you down. If you like my setup, I've linked my layout for free in the description over on Coffee with instructions on how to load it into your game. But to tackle it yourself, press Control and backslash to unlock the UI and start organizing elements. Under the UI settings tab, you can scale different UI elements based on what you need bigger or smaller. If you're a more casual player, maybe you shrink your bars for a more cinematic feel. But if you're into raids or PvMP, it's usually smarter to centralize your abilities and target info for faster reaction times and not having to look around the screen so much. But whatever you decide, make sure to save it. If you type /UI layout save and then the name, you can reload this on any of your characters instantly. You can even put it in a program like OneDrive to have it available in case anything ever happens to your computer. But we can speed things up even more for you by fixing one of the most overlooked and poorly utilized spaces by the default UI settings: the menu buttons. LOTRO has a ton of menus, and by default, the buttons at the bottom of your screen don't always open the ones you'll be using the most. Most of the right side, for example, is just dedicated to useless bag buttons. Head to your UI settings and you'll scroll to the top. You'll see options to choose what each button on the left or right does. I recommend changing them to the features you commonly find yourself using. They'll be different for everybody. Once this is set up, you'll be able to stop wasting so many clicks through all the same menus. Next up is inventory management. LOTRO's system isn't the most robust out there, especially if you're coming from games like World of Warcraft or Guild Wars 2. It's glaringly obvious. We don't get any bag-specific filtering or protections by default. Carry-alls exist that hold specific items for us, but they're locked behind a pretty hefty paywall. But you can still tidy things up. In your inventory, you can click the tiny cog icon at the top of bag 1, and you can rearrange your bags, combining them into one giant bag or one big bag and 2 smaller bags, or whatever you want. I usually like to keep all of my consumable items separate in games, but since you can't exclude a bag from being auto-sorted by the button in LOTRO, I don't really do any micromanaging. I just shove everything into the one bag. Just remember to lock any items that you want to keep safe, and move on. All right, but let's talk about actually seeing what you're doing, because LOTRO can get very dark, especially in places like Moria. First, you can head into your graphics settings and turn up the ambient light slider. This alone is going to make a huge difference in those dim areas. But there's also a lesser known shortcut of Alt F10 that toggles a lantern around your character at night or in caves. It's one of those settings that the game doesn't even tell you about, but is so helpful. Now, past the darkness, combat in LOTRO can be visually overwhelming, especially at higher levels with multiple enemies, effects, and animations on screen at any one time. But one easy win is enabling the target induction bar for enemies in UI settings. This setting is so important, in my opinion, that it is a crime that they have it off by default. It makes timing your interrupts of abilities so much easier. But you do have to have floating names on. This gives you a bar that you can position anywhere on screen, in addition to showing a bar on any character that's casting an induction skill around you. But while you're in there, you can also click Selection Vital Display to display health bars above enemies, which is great if you don't want the nameplates near the center of the screen. But in Dungeons and Raids, one of the easiest ways to speed up your reactions is by simply making the game work for you. You can start by enabling Show Vitals of your selection's target in the Combat Options tab. This will show you who your target is targeting. Great for knowing who's pulled aggro in a dungeon or which enemy your tank or raid leader is focusing on. But we can piggyback off of this for even more ease of life by turning on something called Skill Target Forwarding, which lets us cast abilities on your target's target that can't be cast on your direct target. For example, if you're healing the tank, you can use DPS abilities to hit whatever they're hitting without ever needing to click off of them. But we're not done with that, because you'll want to also enable the assist window. When you are in fellowships and raids, this will display any designated assist targets chosen by your group leader. So you can just click it and stay on target. This massively cuts down on confusion and speeds up encounters for everyone. But not everything is about combat. One of my favorite LOTRO quality of life settings is something super simple: Move to Use. When you turn this on, simply right-clicking on any NPC you can interact with, crafting node, or object to pick up or break in the universe will automatically move your character in a straight line to it. I constantly use this to give me a couple seconds for taking drinks or organizing my bags. But speaking of bags, we need to talk about Autoloot, because pretty much everyone says to turn this on, but I don't think it's as straightforward as it seems. By default, unlike most MMOs, Lord of the Rings Online already collects loot from your defeated enemies into a temporary loot window, where it holds items for up to an hour or up to 50 pieces of loot. This already eliminates the massive hassle of looting bodies that this setting typically will save you in a game. Now, if you're a VIP or have plenty of extra inventory space purchased, turning this on is fine. You're rarely going to run into an issue because VIPs can sell on the move, and if you have tons of inventory space, it doesn't matter. But if you're just starting out or you're free to play, Autoloot can backfire, because if your inventory is full, you can't harvest crafting materials that aren't already in your inventory, as they don't go into the Autoloot window. That means you either have to skip valuable resources or spend time deleting items from your inventory, missing out on that loot and just wasting time. Instead of this, you can just let your loot pile up while you're questing, milestone back to town, and pick it all up where you can safely sell it or store it in your vault. All you need to do is make sure you keep an eye on it every once in a while in the loot panel so that it doesn't overflow. Check out this short playlist here with more tips that have saved me days in LOTRO, from traveling smarter to better, more intuitive key bindings that I had to learn the hard way, so you can keep playing smarter and not harder.